Oh, yeah. Hey, everyone. It's a little weird to see me since I said I was going to regularly be uploading content and it's been like a year. But, I finally found the will to make content again. So here we are. So I am back with a video that's a little more conceptual than it is educational in terms of the hands. Like, I wanted to talk a little bit about something I've been like thinking a lot in the past couple of weeks. And just in general, like I'm always self-evaluating the way that I do things and the way that I educate in an attempt to constantly grow as an educator and as a person. And this was something that I realized was a lot more important than I've been giving it credit for. And I always give it a lot of credit, but I feel like now that I've really put it into practice and seen it in practice and preached it to my colleagues and my close friends and people that I work with, I realize that it really is true to just I don't even know what words I want to use, but it is truly as the Mandalorian says, the way. As you can tell, I don't have enough screens in my room to be able to reference one for the script, so I sent the script to my phone and we'll be reading it and trying to stay true to it. But I have a thing where I like to ramble when I'm speaking from the heart, so I apologize ahead of time. I also apologize for my raspy voice. My allergies have been murdering me. But let's start the video. What I really want to talk about is, sorry, I'm scrolling back up because this is my third attempt at this video. I want to talk today about the constant refining of your perception as an educator. And by yours, I obviously mean mine, everybody's. And that's a fancy jumble of words. So what does that even mean, right? Well, let's see what I wrote. There are many ways to break this down, but they're all kind of, fighting each other in my head. So I'm just going to say them as they come out. But simply put, I've realized that the best way to constantly improve as an educator is to, constantly be aware of the teaching environment you're providing and committing to improving that always. Now, again, what does that mean, right? Getting more and more into it. Oh my god, I scroll too hard. I scroll too fast. Right. So your perception towards your group and your students is easily the most influential thing you can commit to improving. Now, it's so easy to get caught up in your students' trauma. Now, it's so easy to get caught up in your students' drama and, the drama of the ensemble, whether it be bad scheduling. Oof, thank you, Mountain Dew. 30-year-old drums, terrible colleagues, sometimes crazy parents, there is an entire list that anybody can, I'm sure, watching this video can relate to and go down the list on. But what's important is what you'll see throughout the video is that I really try to concentrate on the things you can do and not the things you can't do, because that just makes sense, right? You can't do, unless you're going to shell out 13-14 grand for a brand new set of drums, then why complain about it, right? We just got to play good rhythms and try to sound as good as we can. Now, the whole negativity aspect behind these issues is a very common and fundamental problem amongst younger educators, mostly because they don't have the experience of dealing with these things and the fallout that comes with dealing with these things or not dealing with them. And to be obviously very understanding, it's not on purpose, right? Like, nobody really goes into this and says, like, I'm going to do the worst because I don't have any experience, or like, it's not like a conscious decision. And if it is, please get out of teaching. But what is important isn't like, but what's really important is that you understand your lack of experience and that you understand that you have to do as much as you can to grow as an educator so that your students may grow with you. Your lack of experience will always be there because we all have to start somewhere. But what's important is that you, again, understand that, and that you understand that you have to constantly evaluate yourself and move forward for the sake of growing with yourself, not only yourself, but like with your students. Continuously refining your perception to process and understand these situations is very, very important, right? And because it when you process and understand these situations, you understand why things unravel, why things are the way they are. And when you understand why things are the way they are, or where these problems originated, or even where they're going after you have a set amount of experience, then you can really learn to come up with like a battle plan of sorts to attack these issues. And depending on your group or what your vibe is, uh, kind of like calibrate that plan to your students and your ensemble to optimize your students' learning experience. You have to do personally what you can do to support your students through whatever scenario or issues that there are. And you can do that by constantly refining your perception and constantly thinking about what you can do better as an educator, as opposed to trying to blame things on old drums or bad scheduling, not enough rehearsal, whatever, you name it. We tend to not point the finger at ourselves a lot of times, and it's mostly solvable by doing that. And obviously I'm not blaming everything on the educators. It's not all on us. We also have to have expectations and standards for our students, but at the same time, our students are learning and they're learning from us. So as long as we're learning and we're consciously being honest about the fact that we're learning, then our students will follow suit, especially if you're honest and you believe what you preach. And you can and you can believe what you preach if you're constantly refining your perception on the way you educate, because you're literally kind of perception is reality. You're always changing your reality as an educator. Going from, oh, we'll never win because we sound bad with these drums, to let me tune these as well as I can and get the kids to play as well as they can so we can have the best shot possible and the most best season that we can have with what we have. If you're constantly complaining and moaning about things about 30-year-old drums, again, not enough scheduling time, sometimes you get stuck with colleagues that just yell at people and get nothing done and are just really not fit to be educators. We're concentrating on the things that we can't help instead of the things that we can help. And again, constantly refining your perception when you find yourself in a negative space, because you will. Because I'm not immune to scrutiny and like these situations I have. And I have learned from these things by doing the wrong thing. So I'm trying to prevent you from doing the wrong thing. But sometimes you have to do not the wrong thing on purpose, but in order to learn, you have to really see the other side. Grass is always greener and whatnot. You think you're doing the right thing, and then you find out that maybe that wasn't the best way to handle the scenario. But going back to the point, if you're constantly complaining about things, then your students will kind of normalize that and start complaining about these things, and not make excuses per se about the drums and all that, because you can go into another conversation about funding and all these things, but putting importance on things that don't really matter. And I know that's kind of hard to understand as a younger educator, because you want the world for your students. You want the best equipment, you want the best scheduling, you want the best etc. But you have to understand that those things aren't common for most band programs. So when those things are the exception, are you gonna cave and be negative about something that you don't have, or are you gonna make the most of what you have? And depending on what route you take, red pill, blue pill, that's the pill that your students are gonna take. They idolize you probably, and they look up to you, and they really expect you to handle things with a certain way, because they don't expect. But going back to what we were talking about, if you're constantly complaining about things that you can't really help, then your students will follow suit. They too will adopt this helpless mindset of putting so much importance on things that don't really matter. And I know it's hard to understand that as a younger educator when you want the best for your kids in terms of scheduling, equipment, educators, whatever, you name it. But it's really mostly about the perception thing. If you can get your students to understand that those things really don't matter, and what matters is that you're constantly growing together towards just being better by the end of the season, then they won't give importance to things like equipment, scheduling. They'll make the most of what they have while they're with you, and that will exponentially make your time so much more valuable when you're with them. Inversely though, red pill, blue pill, if you take the other road, then they will very much feed into the negativity and complain about the equipment, complain about the scheduling, and really feed into this negative energy that is unnecessary. I'm gonna say it's just a waste of time and energy. Like, if you're not getting $14,000 drums, why are we wasting time talking about this? Let's talk about playing good rhythms and playing good sounds. And no matter how developed or underdeveloped your program is, maybe you're jumping onto a veteran band program or something that just started, you must really, really be present in your attempt to teach your students how to be part of like a growth mindset. And that's important because a lot of students, regardless of like how educated they are, their experiences, can smell whether you're really present in the moment, there for the right reasons or not, and they will follow suit depending on what kind of energy you give off. If your if your perception is generally negative towards your students and your program, then your season will follow suit. Not just like obviously your students, but the whole season will probably just be a big nasty negative mess as a result of literally just perceiving things to be negative, because perception is reality. And I know people don't like to hear all that spiritual mumbo jumbo, right? I mentioned the word energy, and I know people don't like that sometimes, or whatever, all these other things. But let's take it scientifically, right? If you could literally not talk about this stuff. You could be like, oh well, I don't talk about the drums, I don't talk about this and this, I just kind of show up and teach and try to do with what I can. Even if you're thinking about it, like 80% of communication is body language. So even if you're not saying it and you're like, oh well, I didn't talk about this stuff and I didn't do this, but like if they can see your body language react to the negativity, then they too like will instinctively, primitively also join you on that boat and react negatively. If you yourself are not bringing the energy and positive reinforcement when negative situations arise, then I mean, I mean, this sounds awful, but then like you yourself do not believe in what you are teaching, because like you can, if your students can see through, again, even if you say it or you don't say it, your body language, like it will leak somewhere. You have to believe what you teach. And that's probably the best advice I could ever give anybody, is like, if you really want to make strides and kind of break through to people as an educator, you have to be about it. Because because like in reality, how can you expect something from your students like commitment and bringing the energy all the time and trying their hardest if you yourself are not bringing that commitment? You yourself are not bringing that to the table. And that's why it's so vital as an educator to always be present in the moment in terms of reevaluating your perceptions all the time and making the best with what you have, because we must really walk the talk if we are truly to educate. We have to be about that life, or whatever colloquialism I can use to better portray this idea. If we are truly to educate, we really must be about that life. And if you're not, or at least striving to be that way, then you are genuinely, and I mean this in the nicest way, doing a disservice for your students. If you continue to negatively influence your students in your program as a result of your limited understanding and lack of perception, then again, in the nicest way possible, you should not be an educator. Like if you're constantly showing up to rehearsal, sorry, that was Mountain Dew again. If you're constantly showing up to rehearsal and just being negative and oozing negativity and not getting anywhere, then I mean, what are you doing it for? Like, go home, bro. Like, don't do this to the students. Like, and it's a lot to expect. Obviously, it's very, very hard. Like, it's not saying it's easy. I'm not immune to scrutiny. I've been through it more times than I can count, and more times than I've probably ever talked about it. But what was important is that in my moments of weakness and strength, because we all go through it, is that I inversely turned it around on, and not always, obviously I had my moments where I couldn't do it, but I learned to consistently get better at doing it always, because I just realized that it is the most that I can do for my students. Like and if I wasn't doing that much at least, then I would genuinely feel like I don't deserve to be here. Somebody else should be teaching this group. And it is also the reason why I continuously fight for educators to get better compensation across all, forms of education, I guess, or fields of whatever it is you're educating. Like if it's dance, I mean, if you're teaching at a traditional school, obviously, or whatever the case may be, I am always an advocate of because if we support the arts and we support the people teaching them, then we can have real educators and people that really care, because they're not worried about their finances, they're not worried about paying their bills. Like all they have to worry about is really like committing to their students, and it's a lot easier when you're not thinking about being poor. And again, this is important, that they are worried about the right things and not about losing their house, because our educators are arguably the biggest proponents of future generations. And I would even argue, like, culture a lot of times. Like the way kids are educated or students are educated is the way they learn to eventually handle issues. And I'll be the first to say that, marching band, marching percussion has really taught me how to divisively deal with my life a lot of times. And it's been thankfully in a positive light. As a result, though, wasn't easy as a result of my constant refining of perception. And even though it didn't come easy, I had a glimpse of it or an idea of it because of the educators that taught me. And I really, and I, and when I felt that, I really wanted to pass that on. And like, I feel like these things don't get talked about too much whenever we watch content on the internet, like all the drumline vids and all these things. We kind of just talk about hands, which I get, like, obviously super important. I'm not discrediting any of the content creators and all that, but I just feel like these conversations need to be had sometimes, because it's easy to overlook them because it's a little generally speaking, I just feel like we don't concentrate enough on the non-manual things in the percussion community. Like we kind of just talk about hands all the time, which I love to. Don't get me wrong, I love to talk about hands. We talk about drum lines all day. It's what I do. I live to do it. But also, I'm just so extremely interested in refining and optimizing the way we can set up our students for success in the future. And I think it comes from a constant evaluation of our own perceptions and our own scrutiny and all that, like making sure that you're always in it for the right reasons and you're always walking the talk. And again, it is not easy. I'm not saying it is easy. I have been teaching for now like 10 years but it is extremely taxing, extremely astoundingly taxing, and it is way easier said than done. The constant evaluation does lead to self-deprecation sometimes, but if you skew your perspective into thinking like I'm always evaluating myself and trying to find better ways to do things in order to give my students a better experience, then I think it turns like from self-deprecation and thinking, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, to, oh, I'm doing my best and I'm always trying and I'm always here for the right reasons, which I think inversely is just a better way to think about things, because it's easier to teach and it's more fulfilling. And after all is said and done, though, and we talked about how hard it is to do this constantly, and when the self-deprecation sets in about, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, you can inversely look at it as, I was always looking to do better, I was always looking to give my students the experience that I want to give them, I was always looking to be a better educator, which I think is very, very vital to the continuation, especially of the activity. And if you truly care about your program and the students you teach, then you will learn to grow and appreciate the growth as much as you appreciate their growth as musicians and as people. But in turn, that growth almost always starts with the way you perceive things, and that will start with you, because they're going to be looking at you. So I hope this really makes you guys think a little bit. And I obviously would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, or wherever it is that I'm posting this. I'm going to post this everywhere, but let me know what you think. Let me know your experiences with teaching. I would love to. I always am up for a conversation about educating and how to better streamline and optimize the process to make sure that our activity thrives, and that like your program and my program, like we can have a conversation about whatever it is that we do, and we can both come out of it with something new and that we can apply to our lives and our students, and that we can both grow from. So thank you guys for sticking around to the end of the video. I know this might be, I don't know how long it is, I haven't checked the timer, but I really appreciate you guys checking out the content. I'm not going to ask you to follow or subscribe, but if you want to, then obviously you're free to. I am going to ask for at least a thumbs up, and I am going to ask that everybody tries to get vaccinated, and be very conscious about everything that's going on right now, because there's a lot of selfishness in the world. Conclusively, with the release of the vaccination, I am very excited that our activity can begin to heal from the 2 years that it's been suffering from, and that people are excited to educate once more once fall band comes around, and they'll be maybe a little more thoughtful about the way they approach things now that we've had time to think and time to grow in our off time and whatever it was that we've been doing during the pandemic. In conclusion, we just got to make sure that we're always trying to point the finger at ourselves first and seeing what we can do about a situation, because a lot of times our students can't really do much more than we can. So if that's the case, then we should do as much as we can to in turn make them do as much as they can for themselves. But that's it. I guess I'll see you guys in another year.